Motion to approve the agenda.
Moved. Second.
Casey? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda is approved. So we have 3 sets of minutes to approve. Have you had opportunity to look at those, all of them? Any corrections or anything that needs to be brought forward? No? Okay, so we can just make a single motion as long as we list them off. So a motion to approve March 20th, April 7th, and April 9th.
Moved. Second.
Lisa?
It's gonna be a fun night.
Okay. All in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we do not have student reports. Administrator reports.
I had enough, I had to take notes. I don't know if we talked about this here last time or not, I can't keep all the boards straight, but the state had put out its equity assessments of the schools. And they do it under 3 ranks, rank 1, rank 2, rank 3. Rank 1 is the highest. It means that a school or a district is doing everything possible and being successful at it in terms of making sure that all students, regardless of the background or circumstances, are performing as well as possible. As a district, we are rank 1, and then Chester Andover it was the one that we had. Ranked level 1, and they had a special emphasis on the fact of how well they're doing in working with historically marginalized students. So there's a lot of good kudos there. These are hard to actually acquire. So the district is doing really well. As folks probably know, most of the people that are working in education do, the governor's plan that went out about how to restructure education with a secondary thought of trying to improve people's taxes, went to the legislature, it sat in the House, they did a lot of discussions, and so the House Bill 454 has made it out of the House as of last Friday. There's a lot that'll probably change now that the Senate has got its hands on it. But there are some that seem to be pretty certain. We had the opportunity to connect with some of the senators at the panel that happened on Monday, and they were talking about these things. So the biggest one that might impact us is this idea that they're saying that schools with grades 6 to 12 must have a minimum enrollment of 450 students. So this is a problem because we had talked earlier at the very beginning of the school year about trying to bring the 6th graders up and have a true middle school model, but we couldn't do it because of the PCBs. This implies that if the state and the federal government are dragging their feet on doing those repairs, it could cost us our school because we don't have the students. The ideal thing to do, and this is just thinking off the cuff, would be to have grades 5 through 12 here, because then they can't close this down regardless of how many students we have. Right? Because the law is clear about 6 to 12.
There's no, sorry.
Yeah.
There's no minimum student requirements for under grade 6?
Nope.
Okay.
No, it was interesting, and I think they realized after the consolidation with the boards that messing with the elementary schools was not going to be a good thing. So they publicly stated that we're not going to touch it. There is language in there that someday they might be able to use, but it's not as specific as this. They're looking at the creation of a construction fund to help schools kind of rebuild a little bit because of all the deferred maintenance. There's $6.2 billion in deferred maintenance across all the schools in the state that needs to kind of come into play to get us up to where we're supposed to be. They are planning on changing special education funding from the block grant to the weighted system. So the system that they changed, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, they're changing again.
They're not going back.
No, they're gonna weight them. I think it was 2.21.
I haven't heard of it, but we were in a reimbursement model, and then we went to the block grant and now they're talking.
Yeah, kind of like they do for free and reduced lunch and English language learners. They're planning on creating the foundation formula. That looks like something that's going to happen. And then they said, districts will be able to raise money locally to increase their school funding. And whenever you hear that, you get worried that they're bumping up against the Brigham decision about equity in terms of funding across the state. But their idea was if we put a cap on how much extra the towns are able to raise above and beyond the foundation formula, that should meet the requirements of Brigham. And so that's kind of what they're looking at. The other thing that was in there, which was kind of interesting, was it gives power to the Secretary of Education to close schools, to force consolidation of districts, and for the state to take over a district if it fails to meet educational quality standards and the class size minimums that are proposed in the bill. Okay, so this one is interesting. I was actually thinking about it today when I was getting prepared for the meeting, and it occurred to me that Brigham versus the state of Vermont comes back into play. And I'm actually going to read what I wrote because it was hard for me to kind of untangle it as I was thinking about it. Since the students from poorer towns historically perform more poorly than students from wealthier towns, that's true across the nation. If this law disproportionately closed schools in poorer towns due to lower student performance, it could be argued that this creates inequity and undermines the principle of equal access to education. So this one could probably be challenged. The other piece is that the Brigham decision highlighted that disparities in educational resources and opportunities violate the Vermont Constitution. Closing schools, and this is important for our elementary folks, closing schools in poorer towns might exacerbate these disparities as students in those areas would face additional barriers to accessing a quality education. It could be argued that such closures in rural areas contradict the state's duty to provide substantially equal educational opportunities. And so it's interesting of the things that they're putting in there. They don't seem like they're actually doing their homework on too much. The other thing, if you're closing schools, right, the people that are going to be the most negatively affected are people outside of Chittenden County, right? Because the kids are going to have to travel for incredibly long times. And so that's where the inequity in terms of resources and providing an equal education comes from. There have been a number of district leaders in schools over the past week or so that have been sending letters, especially to the Vermont Superintendents Association, very upset with them because they were promoting the adoption of 454. You know, somebody asked me, I don't remember if it was at this board, but I said, yeah, I felt like they rolled over without a lot of thought into what that law might do. The other piece that was a lot of discussion, I think you had sent an email on this, was the order from the U.S. Department of Education to basically stop all DEI work and initiatives within the districts. The Secretary of Education kind of hopped on that bandwagon at the very beginning. The U.S. Department of Education sent around a letter that all school districts were supposed to sign saying, you know, they would do away with this type of programming, even though it's in violation with Vermont law and the Civil Rights Act. After she heard the complaints from the superintendent, she changed her tune and she did what New York and Massachusetts had done. She sent one letter on behalf of the state basically saying that we are going to comply with the law as it is, and that you have no grounds and no authority to be making this decision. So I was actually surprised in the end how strong her statement was. So I was pretty impressed with that. And that's pretty much it for the superintendent's piece, unless there's questions on any or anything else.
I have two questions. Those thoughts that you were reading earlier, those were your thoughts or those are quotes from someone?
Oh, mine.
Okay.
No, it was because I was thinking about the Brigham, because it was talking about districts raising money locally, and it's like, oh, wait a minute.
Yeah, that's.
If you're changing this stuff, then that's the same thing, isn't it?
Yes, and impoverished kids have an hard time getting to school when it's close and distance.
And how are you going to compete against your peers if they have a 5-minute walk and you've got a 75-minute ride?
Right. The equity reports.
Mhm.
Of course, that raises flags for me as it relates to the federal mandate.
Yep.
Have they changed the name or anything? No, okay.
No, and again,
Individual targeting a school.
they seem to be targeting the colleges right now, probably because they're more prominent. I mean, the basic logic of those orders when they came down that we were kind of getting from legal counsel and some people that were better in the know is basically just keep quiet and keep doing what you're doing. Right, we're small schools in Vermont, people probably aren't gonna be picking on us. If you got districts out there with, 120,000 kids like you do in California, that's probably a different story.
Well, and I'd love to celebrate the work of Chester Andover. That's an incredible accomplishment and feel a little reserved to
Yeah.
be putting it in the press or putting it out there, like this is an excellent school because of this reason and that.
I think it's important to understand too, that the whole district was level 1. So like Cavendish,
Celebrate
they
it for us, yeah.
couldn't quite rate you because the population is too low and people might be able to identify who the kids were. So your ratings were high too. They just, and that
But I think
included Mount
that's-
Holly and
Yeah.
Ludlow as well.
But that's to me, as a parent, that would be something that would draw me to this district.
Yep.
And yet do we feel like we can't celebrate that because of that order? And maybe I'm just
Well,
hyper vigilant about this.
maybe, I mean, because our Vermont senator is going around the country
It's
and
true.
giving speeches to 5,000 people, maybe
It's
we should just keep our heads down.
That's lip burn.
If you don't live in the United States, you live in the state of Vermont.
Yeah.
It's very close to
It's very close.
Canada.
Yeah.
All right, so no further questions?
Adrian, check your thoughts on. There's someone can succeed.
Hmm?
There's only one public comment.
We reduced it, but we can put back where you want it.
There's supposed to be 2. Don't we normally do it prior to, did it get moved?
There's one that happens before you get to new business.
Yeah, it's not the public comments, it's not there. Maybe that's a committee.
And I guess we could put one in after
You
new
sure did.
business.
But do
After
we need a
discuss.
motion and
Well, we should have done it at the
Right.
approval of the agenda.
but now we need a motion at second and 2/3.
Yeah.
Seems like we probably could.
All right, so where would you like it?
Old business. After old
After
business.
old business?
Yep.
All right, so your motion is to add,
My motion is to add public comment after old business.
is there a second?
Yes.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
And that's a permanent?
Yeah, there's supposed to be 2 public comments. Okay. So principal reports, did everyone have an opportunity to read them? Any questions on them? Is there anything you'd like to add to your reports? Good. Curriculum reports?
It is updated. I'm assuming that you have a link that you're accessing these through.
There's usually links.
Okay, because I just want to make sure that those are available. Probably what we're gonna do, as we're kind of redoing things is, try to get just the full packet out, probably at least 2 or 3 days in advance. That way you've got everything. We're also gonna be posting it on the calendar, the Warren calendar that's on the district website. That way anybody can have access to the stuff that's public.
When will Lisa be joining us? In any type of interval? Will she be giving us reports?
I probably similar to what TRSU had talked about, same thing with anybody, when you need them or you want them, just ask. They're happy to be here. I'll go through the report that she's got in just a moment. Also, the other thing that we talked about is, if you've got a superintendent and you're under policy governance, superintendent gives you reports that's showing that they're in compliance. If you feel the superintendent is not being honest about it, that's when you call in other people and kind of do your checks as part of your oversight responsibilities. So
What did we decide? I'm trying to remember what we decided. I thought that
She
there was
was
some sort of
quarterly.
interval. Yeah, interval. So she'll come in quarterly?
Yeah.
When will that start? Do you know?
we can start it in June. June's the end of one of the quarters, isn't it?
Yes.
It's the
Yeah.
end, yeah.
Yeah.
So she'll join us in June.
What
Okay.
is that?
Lisa, the curriculum director.
If we stick with financial.
I just wanna have it, that'll go on the calendar, the calendar so people can expect it.
I don't recall seeing a link, and I have not seen the link before.
There's usually,
It's usually,
Is it usually in the calendar
I
invite?
have to go through the.
I know, I'm going through it right now.
it's usually,
Oh,
it's right
in the
next to the,
agenda.
in the agenda next to
Okay,
the.
that's, I'm looking in the packet.
And they, you do the
Got
same
it,
thing
yep,
Cheryl does for budget
okay,
usually.
financial. Okay, thank you.
So the team, in terms of curriculum, team is currently collaborating on interpreting performance data in order to update their CIPs, right, school improvement plans, continuous improvement plans, and to see how the district is progressing on current goals. They're also reducing the number of current programs and initiatives down to what seems to be working the best and what has the most promise. That way folks can focus strongly on those. The team is updating the new teacher mentoring program, which is great. They're rewriting the handbook to clarify expectations and better align the program with the district's goals. The state started the Read Vermont program, right? And this was to address all the literacy problems that they identified in the youngest kids across the state. It is now on hold because the federal government clawed back the money for it. And so it's a state initiative. They're trying to figure out, how to get this up and running again. As most of the folks who have students in the schools know, that the VCAP assessment has been administered over the last couple of weeks. And then there is a lot of work happening with most of the principals on a new multi-tiered system of supports. Codifying what they have. They're working with an outside expert to make sure that it is serving the students the way that it should. So there's quite a bit of work that's happening in terms of curriculum. So questions or thoughts or concerns?
With the reduction in how we're going to be getting reports, so that the link will be kept up to date monthly.
Mhm.
And then in regards to testing, when will we, because I do enjoy getting like reports. I don't want it to just kind of come clumps months, like months after they happen.
Yeah, no, as soon as the state actually takes the embargo off, which sometimes they wait a year before they do, I always put a PowerPoint together and kind of the boards to take a look at it.
Okay,
There is some data that is more specifically tied to the goals and the general data that comes from VCAP, and that's what we'll talk about with the ends, the ends policies.
okay. It's gonna be a growing thing for sure. Okay. All right, any questions about the curriculum report? All right, Terra Street Facilities?
Okay, I don't have a lot, but what I do have is, very informational, but to start out, Wayne had asked just before, spring sports here at the high school had 105 kids participating, which is like some of the highest numbers we've had forever. Do want to give a shout out to Springfield. We were not able to field the varsity girls softball team in this year. Numbers just didn't develop. I mean, it's one of those things that happens, unfortunate, but we sent 6 kids to Springfield. They actually started a 3rd softball team, a JVB team, is what they call it. They have a JVB team, JVA, and a varsity team. And started the JVB team because of how we did it. So big shout out to Springfield. They didn't have to do that. They just could have said, nope, sorry, we can take X amount of girls and that's it. And they really stuck up. So big shout out to Rich Sapek and the athletic department there. Cavendish, I think I'd reported the last meeting that our involvement as far as facilities with the pre-K one is very minimal. They're gonna hardwire a CO2 detector in, HP. They're doing it, Emma? Did it today, so that's done. Maybe some furniture and fixtures to buy, but at a minimal cost. It will be, as far as facilities go, as far as staffing and all that, that's, a different pay grade in mine. Chester Andover, Cheryl and I met with FEMA. According to our liaisons with the state, this is picking up steam at the federal level. They're telling them that this is moving forward. It's on their radar at the federal level. They're talking about it. They're moving forward with it. There's some logistical concerns for Cheryl and I, and some timing issues for some grants. And we're trying to be very careful with everybody's money where we're not opening ourselves up and spending money before the feds actually say, this is how much we're gonna give you. But there, along with doing that, there's a time limit on when we can apply for some grants. So we're kind of stepping on some toes to find out we can move this thing forward a little bit faster. At the very best, I don't foresee us moving forward this project until maybe next summer. No way will it happen this summer. They could tell us tomorrow that, yes, here's X amount of dollars, go do whatever you want with it, and there's no way we could start a project like that. I mean, maybe start it with some groundbreaking stuff, but I mean, without going into full swing, I don't foresee this happening until next summer. It was brought up at the TRSU meeting, about our buses, and Cheryl and I were talking, you have the reserve fund. So I called Cressy's where we had originally bought these buses, and he showed up today. He's gonna give me, a fairly hard number on what our bus with the highest mileage is on it for a trade and how much a new one is. Doesn't mean we have to do it, but at least I'll be able to come back either to this board or to the TRSU and say, if you want to trade and upgrade one bus per year or whatever, here's a good starting point. And Cressy, we're really happy with Cressy. I would change a few things on the spec on the buses, but, they talked about it at the TRSU level, so we're gonna move forward with that.
And Todd, what's the highest mileage now?
Around 80,000 or so, you know, and our buses are actually, I mean, we're seeing some very increased, maintenance schedules, you know, we send them in for inspections, but they're 5 years old, they're starting to run a lot of dirt roads, the roads are rough, everybody knows how rough the roads were this year, so, you know, with the age of the buses, just, you know, it's nothing to see $1,000 inspection where, you know, you got brackets broke, exhaust brackets and,
That's the
you
low end.
know. Got some, yeah, we've got clutch fans that are, you know, we've got a couple clutch fans that have taken off on us, and they're just, you know, it's time, it's, you know, it's not,
Suspension. parts.
yeah, I'm not seeing anything, you know, where I'd be like, maybe we should, you know, get away from those buses or change dealerships. It's just, you know, it's normal
We
maintenance.
would
you
have
know.
to go out to bid because it's over $40,000.
Yeah. That's
That's good.
8, 9.
But it's time, as
Yeah.
Scott's saying, you know, that's what now you have them.
Yeah.
Now we have them.
Yeah.
At least.
Yeah.
Now you start to roll them in.
So I did ask one of the old salesmen at Cressy went back to International, and I asked him, what are you seeing on electric buses? He said there was a huge push for electric, and they're really seeing it decline right now. Not sure if it's because, he wouldn't say it was because they didn't work out. He didn't say that. He was just saying that a lot of it is the federal funding has now gone away or really depleted, because a lot of these school districts could not operate electric buses without getting grant money, and that grant money is kind of dissipated now, so. Last but definitely not least, here at the high school, the PCB source testing results are in. I got them today. Did not forward them to Adrian because I didn't even get a quarter of the way through it. 1,740 pages. So, well, so good, actually, so that's what I'm thinking, right? I'm looking through this, I'm like, so I called Craig Sterick, our guy for Harper, who works for our school district, not for the state. He works for us. I said, you gotta give me something simple that I can tell our board. We have a board meeting tonight. Some of the sources were what we already knew, right? Caulking in the windows. They did some outside caulking tests. They did some ground tests. None with the transformer outside, 0. They tested absolutely 0. But they found some in the ground close to the school where caulking was falling off the windows, right? The big thing was tile. They found a lot of it in the mastic, which is glue underneath the tile, which we all know that's where PCBs from caulking, you know, that's what makes glue pliable and rubbery is PCBs. So they found that in quite a few classrooms. Doesn't seem to be off-gassing enough where our filters aren't keeping up with it, because our indoor air quality numbers are dropping, which they do in the wintertime. So, he said it's yes and no, good news, bad news. They saw some stuff that they didn't expect to see, like as in how much it was in the flooring, some pretty high numbers. But they didn't see it in a lot of the mastic on the code base, which they fully expected to see it there because it's the same gold. So they're little, you know,
Makes me question the data entirely.
well, so I
Unless
said,
that was
to him,
redone.
some of that code base could have been changed, right? Some of that could have been changed in the same, he's looking at, 6 or 8 inch code base, and he's like, well, from when the school was built, and I'm like, look, you could have put the same size and same color code base, and it could have been changed 3 times, who knows, right? So, my suggestion was for him to come and speak to this board. He works for us, so we should get him on the agenda, and he was more than willing to come. We should give him a little time because he did explain a lot to me, but I'm gonna let him explain it to you because they're the experts on dealing with this, and I would never wanna say something out of line. So it's good news, bad news, not catastrophic, I will say that, not from what he's telling me, what he told me today. What he did tell me that I can tell you is that the next step is this goes to the DEC. This is gonna take them, who knows how long, DEC, Department of Environmental Conservation. And they will digest that 1,750 pages of data. Then they will come back and they will meet with me and Harper and the EPA on steps on how to mitigate. And then we get into, us running to our constituents of the state saying, put more money into the PCD fund. So that's where we're at in a nutshell for NCDs. That's all I got.
When would you expect him to come speak with us?
He actually said I would come tonight, and I said, you're not on the agenda, so I'm not gonna do that to the board, because it's gonna be, everybody's gonna have a lot of questions for him. Craig is very, as a matter of fact, so when he explains it to me, it's very black and white, so it'll be understanding. Not like when you're talking to the DEC where they use a lot of acronyms and you don't really understand what they're talking about. Craig is very good about explaining things, so, anytime, if you want him at the next meeting, I'll have Lane get him on the agenda, and I'll just call him and tell him he should be here.
Make a motion, he comes to the next meeting.
Yep, we can make that
I
happen.
don't need to make a motion for that. Can I just request that some sort of digestible summary is sent out to us, like in the agenda, just so or the packet, just so, because I would rather spend a little bit of time becoming prepared as opposed to having to try and figure it out as we go.
Yeah, I'll talk to Craig. I'll talk to him. I can't speak for him because that'll have to be something he puts together, right? So I'll ask him if he could put together something, a page of what him and I talked about today, just
The
a
highlight.
basic layout of, highlights of what we talked about.
Executive summary.
Yeah. He did talk about some other things about, what could happen. This was another thing, I'm glad I looked at my notes. All the filters have been changed, right? We changed them this week. Harper was here, his crew was here, so all new pre-filters, inner filters, and main filters, and all 57 units. The building, which state's still covered in that bill.
Yeah, that was not cheap.
Yeah. 50, right around
Well,
55.
just to dispose of them was $10,000.
Yeah. The disposal was 10 grand hazardous.
Because it's toxic, right? Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. I have a question about PCBs, then I have another question.
Yeah.
The source testing, that's what
Yeah.
that's called. This is the first time that's happened here,
No,
or this is a repeat of a previous test?
just so the first source testing they did, they were kind of targeting the caulking around the windows. And then they were gonna do what Newport did, which we're glad that they did. We're gonna try to change the window. Newport did it, and that's what shut Newport down at the start of the school year last year, because it drove the PCB numbers through the roof and the filters couldn't keep up, so they had a delay in the start of school there. We didn't do that here. They were ready to do it, and they didn't. Then the state said, before we start going forward with changing windows or encapsulating, we want to know if there's other sources. So they did find some.
Who is actually doing the testing? The state?
I don't know the company that Harper uses.
The laboratory, I mean?
Who's paying for it? Like the state,
The
the
state.
state picks them and contracts them and sends them out and,
So when all this started 3 or 4 years ago, we were assigned Harbor Environmental.
okay.
And they
So
work
just come in
for
and do
us,
it.
but the state is paying their bill. We're not paying them at
Okay,
all.
so the testing is essentially our testing and we invoice the state and they pay for it. I'm just trying to
Yeah.
figure out like whose,
We pay for the
whose
state
data is it? Is it
It's
our
ours.
data? Is
No,
it
it's
their
ours.
We
data?
pay the bill of the state reimbursement.
Okay.
Yeah, it's our day.
Okay.
Yeah, and part of the idea of this is after the conversation with PHO is moving forward with it is, if you can show that it's all throughout the school, if and when that lawsuit gets settled, I want them to build us a new school because it's through the school. And we got the data to prove it. The state seemed to be pretty selective when it started out about what it was testing and what it wasn't.
Okay, I remember that conversation, so that's helpful. I have a non-PCB question.
Okay,
Do we help the girls get to Springfield?
No.
No, they're
they're
parents are
responsible.
for getting.
Member to member is that way, done that way. That's a VP, something the VPA set up,
Okay.
not us. We have a member to member program because it's high school kids. They have to get themselves there.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, and just to be clear, we talked about flooring and caulking, they found some issues with paint. So, there's some good and bad news with PCB, so it's not all bad, it's not all good, and I was enthusiastic with it, he said it wasn't catastrophic. So.
How's the boiler doing?
Appreciate it.
So I will say this, and Scott, kind of funny, but I know it's not our school district, right? So we talked about, and Scott, you and I have talked about this, right? Wood boilers and, we had all these conversations at LMH. We put in that new boiler at LMH and right now they're around a $10,000 savings in fuel by switching to propane.
It's a little squishy for that.
Just in this
For
year?
that little school, yeah, it's close to 10,000 savings. So not saying that, I don't know how that would translate to a bigger building like this, but in that school itself, that was a great move for them. Put that boiler in and just the savings in 1 year for propane was awesome. That was a good move for them, but it's
The research on it, if that boiler was from when the school was built, the current one that's here, to putting in a modern boiler, a 2024, it said you could expect about a 33 to 35% reduction in your costs in a building like this.
But to answer your question, Scott, no issues. Boilers right now, we're having some water issues we're dealing with, but that's just age of the building, nothing huge, but just puts a dent in your budget every time you turn around.
Elevator's working good.
Oh, yeah. So, any other questions? Sorry to take up too much of your time.
Appreciate it.
All right, financial update?
Okay, so we've got the financial through March. Yeah, and we spent 65.5% of the budget. It's a pretty good place to be. We're looking at overages for Chester Andover and Green Mountain and their for their para-educators, and that's based on needs of students that we had to hire some additional people. We do have some savings for tuition students because we still have a couple students that are grandfathered in with Baltimore, so that we're paying them to go to other districts. And we have a savings because I think they either did tech or they moved out of the district or something like that. We'll see the savings on
When is that out? Grandfathers and students, isn't it? It's gotta be like,
that. I think it's within the next couple of years. I have to look. I think some of the kids were young when we did that transition and they could stay what they wanted to stay. Yeah. Yeah, well, I think we're very close. We're very close. I also wanted to mention, our HR person left us in March. It was very tough because she was an excellent HR person. And we have hired Abby Marconi. She's moving up from Maryland. She's very excited and she's going to start at the end of May. So we're excited to have her start. And we are doing a federal audit supposedly next Thursday, the 24th. They asked us for information as of to be given to them by April 1st. And by April 8th, they were going to ask us to get we have to pull checks and stuff like that. I had to look at the funding. And we haven't heard from anybody, so.
We're wondering if the federal cuts, no, seriously, we're wondering if the federal cuts.
Well, I think they've got enough going on because they did the, with ARP ESSER money, we could ask for a waiver to extend our money longer, and we did that. We have about $20,000 that we have in play. And we got permission, we got the waiver, we got the approval, and now we have to do it again. And the wording has to be very specific. We've talked about, some of it won't go through because of the DEI aspect of it. So we're looking at different ways to fund it, because even if we go through all these hoops and we do these waivers, there's no guarantee coverage.
What's up, funding?
Professional development,
That was,
pre-coach, teacher coaching.
Okay.
All I got unless somebody has questions.
Extra.
RBTC?
Well, Lois, this is my turn. Everybody sends their regards and thanks you for your service. And I went to my first meeting and I also did a tour of RBTC, which I recommend anybody do. It's a wonderful place and a lot of really phenomenal educators who kind of, every one of them told me about their program, and I met some students and it was wonderful. The board meeting, we talked a bit about negotiations and quite a bit about enrollment. So there's no real difference in enrollment at this point. They're still building enrollment for next year. Talked a bit about the middle school program and how the different opportunities that will be coming up for middle schoolers towards the end of the year, which I thought was a really cool thing, and that we can get kids there. And we also talked about their student, well, actually, this was during my tour. They shared a bit about the student satisfaction. They have excellent student satisfaction scores, like really high. And I will say that just watching the students there, now I haven't done a tour here, I'd love to do a tour here, but just the engagement of students while in school was quite wonderful. Like everybody was doing something, and it was, kids everywhere, but everybody was actively engaged in something. And I got to see robots and other cool things. And the same day that I was there, the governor showed up. So the governor got the same tour later in the day. I didn't see him, but it was exciting to have the governor kind of get that exposure as well.
TRSU, this past month, we did our board reorganization. We discussed a vendor contract, which was accepted, which will be the equipment for the entire district, correct? For copiers. You don't remember the number though? Remember off the top of your head? Just what it was.
Over 5 years, it's 160,000.
No.
But we're gonna be saving.
Okay. We had a pretty decent discussion about the Rural School Alliance. One of the TRSU members is very active in it. So I don't know if anyone here decided to spend any time reading about it, but it's interesting, to say the least. And then the only real business that pertains is TRSU approved a 4% increase for the non-bargaining employees.
I did read about the Rural School Alliance and would love to be like a fly on the wall, but I just don't have the time to put it into my schedule. I think it would be nice for us to follow, so I'm glad somebody from the TRSU is. And would love any report backs if something.
I can try to engage him. He is very engaged, and I think it would be overwhelming
Right.
if I had
Maybe
him
we'll.
forward.
Yeah.
So I'll see if there's
Maybe
a
he
way.
would share the minutes. I'd be happy to like read the minutes and kind of pull stuff out if he was open to sharing them as a way to stay connected.
I believe actually, Amber, you pulled quite a bit from what you reported. So if you go into the TR, do you have access to the TRSU minutes?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, if not, I'll try to
Okay.
bring it back, or I will try to summarize
Okay.
for him.
Thanks. I'll try. Amber said she'd send it to me so I can look.
Outreach,
Yeah, outreach committee met. We did our typical outreach bulletin for the month of March because it's April now. In addition, Julie was present, Julie Perry was present, and we kind of finalized a very small edit to the district's websites, which involved adding a banner at the top of each one that just said forget the actual wording for it. It's something like, find additional board information, click here to get involved, sort of thing. And it was just a way to address a lot of the concerns that we got through surveying the community about, minutes or agendas and things like that being difficult to find. So tried to put all that information in one really easy spot that didn't mess with the rest of the web pages. Basically trying to add and not subtract things that might be working well. So hopefully that's working.
And just real quickly for, we can talk about it a little bit more when we get to the position, but, I don't know if anyone wants to talk about maybe being on the outreach committee.
Yeah, someone who's good at some of his
Yeah.
stuff, not just good at listening about it.
So, all right, so just have that in your minds. Legislative committee.
Okay, as far as the big bill right now, 454, Lane kind of hit the highlights at the beginning of the meeting here. It's with the Senate now, so the big question is waiting to see what shakes out of that, what they carve up and put out. We did have a community forum at Chester Town Hall that allowed us some access to state legislators to talk about these issues. And again, Lane summarized it pretty well. As far as closure of elementary schools, they've been pretty consistent both in the bill and in their own testimony and statements that there's really no appetite for the elementary schools being closed or consolidated. The focus is the higher level schools, and that's where we anticipate seeing changes that will impact us potentially. And again, speculative on my part, but as far as the authority ceded to the Secretary of Education, if I had to guess, by the time this goes through the Senate, they'll claw back a lot of that power because of the resistance to her appointment anyway. So I would be, I guess, a bit surprised if they left those elements in the bill, if they get it through. We are meeting again, and I didn't have a chance to stop home and grab my notes before I made it here, so don't have the data off the top of my head.
Can I just, the 454 and the elements about closing elementary schools, and I appreciate that there isn't an appetite for that, but the limits that they are setting would impact one of our schools, right? 15 in a classroom. And so there is potential for one of our schools to be on the chopping block. So I just think we have to be transparent when we're talking about that element of it.
And again, from the forum too, is with the legislators that were present at least, they again, were not interested in that, even the classroom sizes. It seemed like they were more interested in a downward trend and not, because that did come up at the forum, and they even indicated strongly that, oh, well, there's exceptions built into this, and that's not what, they were very adamant, like, we're not looking to mess with the elementary school level schools.
I'd like to see that written in the legislature.
Yeah, I
I know
know,
you're not
I know.
writing the legislature, but it would be great, because it's contradictory, right? Like in one side of their communications, they're, saying we don't want, elementary schools impacted. I don't even remember the language that they put in there, but, and then to have class sizes of 15, it does.
And as all legislative things are, typically there's exceptions built into every element of the
You
bill.
gotta go find them.
So depending on where you're at, how well you can, potentially fall into the exception category of tuitioning money out of state or classroom sizes. The technical centers are excluded from that.
Right.
It brings up another thought on the Brigham. Is that if they do start to close elementary schools, and there is language that would allow them to do it, but it's not specifically tied to elementary. Especially the smaller rural elementary schools, you're gonna lose family engagement and the community engagement, which again is another loss of equity.
Absolutely.
Especially when family engagement has been shown in the research for Lord knows how many years as one of the things that drives success for students.
Yeah. My family engagement has dropped just by my kid coming over here, and I'm pretty capable, I have a car, gas money, and all of that, but it's true, the distance does create a barrier.
Yes.
And thank you for doing the Chester family, did
Yeah.
a fantastic job. You killed it. All right, that brings us to our first public comment. And I've noticed, in probably the last 3 to 4 meetings, we've sort of started deviating from where we were just, it's the public giving us information. We've started to have interactions again. So I'd like to just kind of bring it back to public talks to us. We're not going back and forth. So is there anyone online that wants to? Okay.
Great. Hey, thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
I'll try to be quick. If you don't know me, my name's John Bannon, and I work in the high school here. I'm a social studies teacher. I'm lucky enough to work here, and I think it's a great school, and I think we're making it better. Also, I'd like to thank you for your service. I've been on some boards myself, and I know how much work goes into it. And you're doing it with a sense of caring about the kids and civic duty. Like sincerely, before we get started, just like you said.
Thank you.
So I'm here about a position. So I know it's kind of delicate. I don't know if I want to say the person's name, but it's about a letter of retirement and a request to rescind the letter of retirement, as I understand it. So what I'll do is I'll give you this letter that I wrote. And I make some points about why I think you should reconsider the decision concerning a letter of resignation. I'll give you just a second. Like I said, I don't want to take a lot of your time, but I'll give you a second to read it. I don't want to really say things in front of the camera.
John?
What's that? Sure, I'll walk one over.
I know, I
Can
don't
I
need
point of
to
order?
clarifying question.
He's asking for this to be read or and not saying it out loud. This is public. They're giving it to us. This is
Okay,
a public
okay, I was
document.
just trying to be considerate of you guys.
Appreciate that, and
How
I'm
you
trying
do
to
it.
just let you
Yep.
know that this is now
Okay.
public by way of handing
Okay.
it to us, so we can't keep this
Okay.
confidential.
No, it's okay.
Okay, so this is about Mike Ripley's letter of retirement that he submitted. And his plans changed and he would like to return. And for a number of reasons, I understand that the decision was made to.
Another point of order?
Yeah.
This feels like, I'm not feeling okay with this. This feels like private information that's being shared without him here and without, I'm sorry, confidentiality
right.
is my thing.
Yep.
I don't know that, it
I
just
mean-
feels like private staff.
I
information
mentioned
being
it
shared.
to him before I came here. And the thing
Not
is,
the
time's
decider,
kind
I'm
of
just saying it
of an
feels
issue because he's got to go start to interview.
Yeah. So, I'm not entirely sure this is, I think if what you want us to do is consider the letter, we can do that,
Mhm.
but I mean, there's not gonna be
Okay.
discussion or.
And I'm sorry, I don't
No,
want to
no, no.
disrupt you in your
Sure.
advocacy, I
I
just don't want to
understand.
do something else.
So this is everybody in the school who signed the petition besides administrators. And what we're asking you to do is simply reconsider your decision. Who's the chair? All right, thank you. All right, I won't take any more of your
Okay,
time.
thank
Thank you for
much.
coming,
Yeah,
and I'm
you
sorry
bet.
to be, I just don't want to.
No, no, understood.
Get
Thank you.
anybody in trouble.
Thank you.
I want to take a moment to, do you want, why don't I do this? You each got a copy of the letter, and there's only one copy of this, so I will pass it around so that you can see who signed. But again, there's not gonna be discussion at this point, so just wanna look.
No, I agree with Kate, when, like,
I wasn't,
I feel like we went from public comment to taking testimony and
yeah,
maybe that's the wrong language, but that's the language in my mind is.
no, it's okay for people to submit petitions
It
and
is,
public
right.
comment, it just was, I
With the
just.
staff, it being
just-
staff information, it's sensitive, it felt uncomfortable.
So, all right. And
Well, that
then,
is my first as a board member, someone presenting something like that in a public comment, is
yeah,
that?
yeah, okay, all right, moving on. You said Wendy McNaughton's got her hand up?
Yeah.
All right, Wendy?
Sorry about that. It took me a second to unmute. This may be a little bit off topic.
One second, Wendy, we can't hear
Turn
you.
you up.
Yeah, let me turn the volume up, Wendy, hold on. All right, go ahead.
This may be more appropriate later. I don't remember if you have another public comment moment or not, because I think later in the agenda you give an update on the preschool. But just put it out there now, just real quick, not a big deal. I'm curious once you get to that point about what the plans are for making sure that our communities know about when that's starting and how they'd register and those types of things.
All right, Emma, is that something that you can talk to? Okay, all right. All right. No one else is. All right, so that brings us to our only order of new business, which is our open board position.
Sorry, board comment.
Good comments.
I just have a.
Oh,
I have a
sorry,
question.
go
I
ahead.
have a question.
Yeah.
I got multiple emails about the policy governance thing that we're supposed to do on Monday. And I'm not sure whether it's on or it's off. So I would just like to
I
clarify.
think that's when, I think you sent out an email saying you were kind of they were doing some testing about some like Zoom links and stuff. I think the accurate one is there.
The last one I got gave me the impression that it was on, but about not long before that, I got one that it was off. So I'm a
21st.
little confused.
I have it for the 21st.
I'll confirm after the meeting when I get a chance.
Okay.
We were training another individual, myself, to be able to post stuff on the warning board and things, so it's been around.
It is on the official Google
Yeah.
calendar.
Okay.
So if it's there, it's probably on, but I'll double check and get an email out to folks.
Okay.
Sorry, I did not mean to skip board comments on you.
No, that's okay. It was just a question that I.
All right, so now new business. So the open board position, is this just for an update of the process?
Yeah, process-wise, we followed the same process that we did for Cavendish. The announcement was sent out, it went out by district email. It was placed on the Facebook pages for the schools and the TRSU Facebook page. It was advertised on the Front Porch Forum, and we also took an ad out in the Chester Telegraph. Due date is about 2 weeks from now, so April 28th. And part of the reason for that is so that we can pass that information off to the select board, who has their regular meeting on May 1st. That way they don't have to have a special meeting. And then, you know, the comments that the board has, if any, you know, will come back to the school board in plenty of time to be prepared to kind of talk with folks and interview folks at our May 15th regular meeting and keep us within the timeline.
You go first. It's about you.
Yeah, so just to say it, if anybody didn't get the email, I've accepted a graduate fellowship at the Rhode Island School of Design. It's kind of mind blowing to me, and it's a really unique opportunity for me to do a lot of professional development. It's a 3-year program, and they're paying me to go there, which is really weird. Yeah, it's like, as much as it is like a no-brainer, I actually really had to consider it because I love living and working here, and I love the work that I do here, and I just really have enjoyed being on this board and working with all of you. And just wanted.
Sorry to see you go.
Yeah, I'm sorry to leave. Truly, and I got the offer during the last, like right before the last meeting, and I was gonna bring it up.
And then we're all like, "You're so great."
Yeah, everyone was like, "You're so great." I was like, I'm like a softie, man. Like I really can't. I can't deal with that sort of stuff. So it's like, okay, maybe I'll sit. But, I hadn't accepted anything at the time, so I was, it was still up in the air. But now we're locked in, so that's thank you. Nicely done. But
So you will be joining us for the last meeting, for the May meeting, though. You will be joining us?
yes,
Okay.
yep. I plan to stay on the board if it's agreeable to everyone until June.
Well, I think at the May meeting is when we would vote for your replacement.
Okay, perfect.
So I think like it would just be a transition at that
Beautiful,
point. That
beautiful.
works.
So you would leave May and they would come on June.
June.
Okay, that works for me. I've never resigned from anything before, so this is all very new to me. So, thank you.
Okay. Any questions about that? No?
Thank you, Zach.
Thank you, guys. It has really been a pleasure, like truly, truly a pleasure.
Okay, old business, negotiations update?
So, actually, we don't have to worry about the teachers on this side. So they'll be meeting again on the 29th. We've had some good back and forth. We've had a lot of back and forth. It is possible that we may be approaching impasse. And
Like impasse.
impasse, and so that'll probably be determined at the meeting on the 29th. But right now, people are still talking, still negotiating, still kind of making changes on, what's been asked for and what's been offered, which is a good sign. That's about all I can go into without being an executive session.
All right, and then Cavendish Public Library Agreement?
So this is really not so much, and I apologize if there's confusion on this. This is really for the board to decide, who will negotiate that. The agreement with the library states in it that it needs to be renegotiated prior to its ending, which is next year. So it would be good to get started on that. And so the board should delegate either myself, Cheryl, just to pick on her, or a subcommittee of the board to engage in that so that we can get started.
Do you have a recommendation about who should be delegated?
I'm happy to do it. Sometimes the board, likes to have that sort of discussion with folks too. So that's another appropriate if there are people that are interested in it and working on it. And they're a good crew to connect with.
I don't feel strongly about one way or the other. I mean, I think it's essentially a business issue. Right?
Yeah.
I don't.
Agreed.
So I'm happy to delegate to Lane. I mean, I'm assuming that you would come to us prior to any official decision.
Yeah, no, you are the decision makers on this. So you'd have to make a motion.
There you go.
Right, so the motion is to delegate authority to do the negotiation
To Lane.
to Lane, and that's made by Scott,
I mean,
Casey?
second.
and then Scott. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
You know.
All right, and then looks like we already got the FEMA update with Todd, unless there's more. And then we already got the preschool update from Todd. Do you want to,
Do you want me to share a little bit more?
oh, okay.
So Todd shared kind of the physical pieces of the space. So since February, we've been meeting Todd, well, there's basically two entities. There's like the building and grounds entity that with the different regulations that we need to make sure that we have in order to get the phase 2 of the license, because it's a 3-phase approach with Brighter Futures, which is the birth to 5 licensing. So we have the kind of technical pieces that Todd addressed, which was and Anthony Lombard, who's our director of facilities at Cavendish. We've been working with them, as well as Steph Raz, who is the director of the collaborative. And Cheryl, maybe you could speak more of what her role is, but the 4 of us have been working on the technical pieces. She works basically with the other pre-K programs in Green Mountain, ensuring, universal pre-K conditions are met. So I've been working with her as it has been the Green Mountain pre-K program. And so we've posted for the position for pre-K teacher, director, and really the interview committee that was formed was the Christina Shelley. She is a special educator, Mary Brody, speech language pathologist who works with that demographic as well. Staff Joey Lane and Holly Falzo, who is our kindergarten teacher. And we had good amount of applicants. And so really the vision is for that person to come in and really drive kind of like the big pieces of advertising, as well as Steph Raz and Mary Brody and Christina are kind of taking the reign in terms of what point do we advertise, because we need to ensure that we have the phase 3 license before we can actually open. So there's kind of like this chicken and egg dance that we're doing. Okay,
Do you have a hopeful opening date? Like, can you? do you have
yeah,
like a target?
in beginning of school.
Okay,
Yeah, and so the licensor with things in place, she felt like we could certainly get the license by the beginning of July. And it feels like we're kind of at that point too, because we've had the fire marshal come in, and so we had the carbon monoxide placed, and so really it's kind of just those lasting pieces that we need to get in place before.
but so not advertising before July for an August start date?
Well, that's the
kind of-
question, is balancing back and forth is if we should do that or not. And really, I'm kind of waiting on the hiring of the director
Okay.
slash preschool person to take the lead, because we really wanted somebody who had experience opening preschool.
I have a question in terms of if we put off the advertising piece for very long, people may make commitments to other preschools, and that may make it impossible to get your target number of students.
Agreed.
Any way to,
I mean, I think that we advertise on the event that, and really, I think that I'm waiting on advertising until we have the lead teacher in place, because that will, I think, ease families as well. And so they know based on licensing, and the licensor certainly said that we would be in good shape. Yeah, I
So
agree.
to all the
agree.
families watching, coming soon.
Speaking of coming soon, did I see another preschool or some sort of
Yeah,
small
Mandy
thing?
knows, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, yeah, I did.
Yeah, and we also have a meeting with Stepping Stones after next week, actually, with the director to talk about potentially doing aftercare before care to support that. So, yeah, there's a lot of moving pieces, but things are moving forward, and that's something that's on our radar in terms of understanding like when to advertise and get families to come.
Any other questions for Emma?
If you have any questions, and community members too, please reach out. I can clarify.
That will bring us to our next public comment.
I'm gonna turn my hat around for a minute.
No one online, okay.
This is to address Tuck. 100 years ago, it seems like, when I moved down here, my youngest stepson had a best friend, and he spent a lot of time in our house, and it was Tuck. So I get to watch Tuck grow up. He graduated with Mac, watched him to where he is now, and it was a pleasant surprise when Julie told me that he was gonna be on the board. It's been refreshing, Tuck, to have a younger generational outlook on things. But.
You just called us out.
Nope, I did not. I said
younger.
I said Tuck was young. I didn't call anybody else old. So it's been refreshing I don't think it's my end anyway, stuff that I appreciate it. I appreciate, and I'm hoping that generation will show more interest in what happens in our community. So thank you, good luck, and, have fun.
Thank you. I know I'm not supposed to respond, but that means so much to me.
assuming you come back to Chester once you've graduated. Join the board again.
Assuming I'm elected again, it's up to the public.
That's true.
Okay, all right. So there were no policies adopted in this meeting. Future agenda items, I have the PCB discussion that you'll set up. Are there any other things people want brought up at the next meeting? And then we have our next regular meeting, May 15th. Prior to that, we've got the training on the 21st.
It is confirmed.
Okay. All right, so, and that is here and on Zoom. That's it. And then we have an executive session for appointment, employment, and evaluation of officer or employee. So I would need a motion to enter, and who are we inviting? By the way?
I would, actually, John, if you're here, so what I would do is I would invite Emma in for the first part, and then we'll go out and invite John in. Because they each have a person to consider for positions.
Okay, so we'll need a motion to do this, inviting Emma and John. Somebody. And Lane, sorry.
Make a motion to enter executive session. Invite Lane, John, and Emma. Under employment or evaluation of public officer, employee, 1 VSA S 313.
Second?
Wow, you're getting quick.
All right.
It's competition.
All in favor of entering executive session?
I,
Opposed? Okay, we are now in executive session. Okay, and we're recording. Okay, so,
Zoom.
you want to go first?
Thanks.
All right.
I would like to make a motion that we extend a 2-year contract to Emma Vestola, to be
Second.
the principal. Let me finish the motion. To continue to be the excellent principal at the Cavendish Town Elementary School.
second.
All in favor of extending a 2-year contract to Emma Vestola?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, passed.
Enthusiastic aye.
Okay. It was Scott.
I said it about 8 times.
I move that we extend a 2-year contract to Joey Lane.
Second.
Great.
She told me to did it.
All right, so, Lois has made a motion to extend a 2-year contract to Joey Lane. Lane, sorry. PC seconded, all in favor? Opposed?
Rick seconded.
Rick?
Rick seconded.
These are like-
Okay,
Very
Nice,
competitive
I
over
like the
here.
energy.
okay,
Got a big-
all right, and then I'm looking for a motion to extend, offers of employment to Hannah Nadeau, the pre-K lead teacher at Cavendish, and Jeff Reiser as, for the math position at GM.
So moved. Second.
You guys are doing that. So talk. Which one of you was it?
I was second.
Okay.
I was
Scott.
first.
All right. All in favor of extending these opportunities?
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm abstaining.
And is abstaining.
Gonna have a little fun here, you know.
Okay. And then last is I'm looking for a motion to approve a 4% increase to the non-bargaining employees.
So made.
Second.
I didn't.
I'm gonna say Casey and Scott.
I didn't say anything.
I think you got that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, this is passed. All right, if there is no further business,
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Scott Casey. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we are adjourned at 8:04.
Thank you.
I'm gonna get you.